So this morning we're going to be reading out the story of the Good Samaritan out of Luke chapter 10, beginning at verse 25. And behold, a lawyer stood up to put him to the test, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" So Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" And he answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have answered rightly. Do this, and you will live." But this lawyer, seeking to justify himself, said to Jesus, "But who is my neighbor?" So Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among thieves, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion, and went to him, and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And the next day he took 2 denarii, and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, 'Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back.' Which of these 3 do you think proved neighbors to the man who fell among the robbers?" The lawyer said, "The one who showed mercy on him." And Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." Now, I'm going to be following something of a classic outline for this story. We're going to be looking at the 3 groups of people and the 3 attitudes that they had with regards to this man and their time and their things. You have the robbers who saw what this man had and said, "I want this and I'm going to take it." The priest and the Levite who said, "Helping this man is going to be hard and take my time and money, and I don't think I want to do that," and walked on by. And then the Samaritan who said, "This man needs my help, and I can help him," and gave of what he had in order to do so. And so the robbers had this attitude of, "What's yours is mine, and I'm going to take it. We will do unto these people as we please, with no regard as to how it's going to impact them in their lives." They simply desired to take what they saw and what they wanted for their own. And this is the easiest way for us to live, I think. It's certainly a very natural way for us to live. In fact, Helen Keller, when she was a child, she was blind and deaf, and her parents had a very difficult time teaching her because they couldn't communicate with her. And so at meal times, she would go around the table and go to each person's plate and take what she wanted for herself, because they couldn't teach her better. She didn't know better. And throughout the writings of Paul, we see reference to the sinful nature, the carnal nature, the nature of the flesh. This idea that man left on his own will seek out that which he desires and simply take it for his own, with little regard to others. And in psychology, we have this idea of the id, that in some branches of psychology, it is believed that when a child is born, they are born with only the id, this being their only aspect of their personality, the only aspect of themselves. And the id simply looks around at what is around them and decides what it wants, what it needs, and will take it. So say my brother has a cookie. The id sees the cookie, says, I want the cookie, and it takes the cookie, regardless of the fact that it's his cookie and he probably wants it too. And according to psychology, this never goes away. This stays at the core of one's being. This influences all decisions a person makes throughout their lives. And so for a human being, it is simply natural to look and see what we desire and seek to take it. But this kind of attitude is also universally recognized as being immoral, wrong, harmful, sinful, whatever word you want to use. People recognize this as being a bad thing. Our laws are set up to avoid us from trampling on the rights of others. And moral philosophy seeks to prove this. We know that taking what isn't yours is wrong, and so we try to create these moral theories to say as much and to say why we think it's wrong. Because we just know. We know that it's wrong. And along with this, not only is it harmful to others, to those around you, but it's equally harmful to the self. We see Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, an entire book devoted to the fact that all the wealth in the world can never satisfy a man and will never fulfill his soul. Solomon was a man who had anything he wanted, and if there was something that he didn't have, all he had to do was say, I want that, and he would have it. He ran a kingdom. He was rich, and he was wise, and he could get anything he wanted. And yet, in the end, with all of his wealth, he said this will never satisfy a man. He called it vanity of vanities, this great emptiness that will never fulfill or satisfy. And in the Greek, there's a word for greed that is far stronger and I think illustrates this picture far greater than any word that we have in the English. And it doesn't simply refer to greed. It refers to a kind of thirst that one has, like when you're lost at sea and you get thirsty and you see all the water around you and you think, well, surely this will satisfy me. And so you drink of the salt water, which makes you more thirsty. And so you drink more and more and more as your desire for the water increases. But the more you have, the more you want, and the worse it is for you until eventually it kills you. And greed can do much the same to you spiritually. The more you take, the more you get, the more you want, and eventually it will run you into the ground. And before I move on, I'd like to mention also that this attitude doesn't only refer to things. It doesn't just refer to cookies and money and clothes. And it can also refer to people's time and their energy and their friendship. And anything that somebody has that you have no right to, or that someone isn't willing to give you, or that you haven't worked for. Any desire for this and being willing to take it at the expense of others is wrong and dangerous and will hurt, in the end, yourself and everyone around you. And then we have the priest and the Levite, who, they're not the villains of the story. They didn't beat up this man and leave him on the side of the road. They didn't take his things. But they're clearly not the heroes either. They didn't help him. They did nothing but go to the other side of the road and avoid this man. They simply said, I'm not going to put out my effort to help this person if it's going to take me out of my way. And while I was looking at this, it reminded me of the form of the golden rule that existed before the time of Jesus, where it read simply as, rather than do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it was do not do to others as you would not have them do to you. And while this is a little bit harder than simply taking what you want, it still requires minimal effort. In order to fulfill this, all one has to do is sit in a room by themselves and close the door, and you haven't hurt anybody. But you have also done no good. You have fulfilled this rule to the fullest extent, and yet you have done nothing for anybody except neglected to harm them. And to most people, this is about all it takes to be considered a good person. In fact, we often fall into this when we're teaching our children about the golden rule. We tell them, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But when we start to apply it, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be, don't hit the person next to you. Don't kick them. Keep your hands to yourself. Don't take their things. Don't. Simply, don't hurt them. And that's enough to get us by here. But this attitude is also very dangerous. We see an extreme case with the priest and the Levite in this story, where simply this attitude of, well, I didn't hurt this man. I didn't beat him up and leave him on the road. Where they said, well, I didn't hurt him. And so they just went on by. Could have cost this man his life. And in Matthew 25, we see a judgment narrative given by Jesus, where he gathers the people before him and says to a group of people, there were those in need and you did not help them, and they were cast into eternal punishment, simply for inaction, for neglecting to help those that needed their aid. But then you had the Samaritan, who he saw this man and had compassion. He saw this person on the side of the road who had been robbed and beaten and left for dead, and said, I have to help this person. I have to. I cannot simply walk on by. This person could die if I leave him here. And so he got off of his animal so that this other man could use it. And the Jericho road is a very rocky and steep and dangerous road, very difficult to walk on your own. And yet he gave his animal so that this man could use it, bandaged his wounds and with oil and wine, which I imagine would have been fairly expensive, and could have maybe been his traveling supplies. Took him to an inn and gave the innkeeper 2 days' wages and said, if you need more, I will pay you back. All for a man who, had they passed each other under normal circumstances, would have likely walked on opposite ends of the road, maybe thrown some insults at each other, and walked on by. He went out of his way to help this man, and that's not easy to do. But it is the only biblical thing to do. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus gives us the golden rule. He commands us to do for others what we would have them do for us. In 2 Corinthians 8:7, Paul is writing about a church who had been gracious in giving. They had fallen on hard times and continued to give even beyond what they really could. And writing to other churches, he is telling them, now as you excel in everything else, in faith and utterance, knowledge, all earnestness, and in your love for us, see that you also excel in this gracious giving also. And back in Matthew 25, those who are rewarded are those who went out of their way to give to these people who were in need, to feed those who were hungry, clothe those who had no clothes, give shelter to those who needed, and water to those who were thirsty. Now, this story, I think Jesus told to this lawyer the way he did for two reasons. The first being, he was asked a question. He was asked, who is my neighbor? Who is the person that I have to love? And this lawyer was seeking justification for his own actions, so I imagine he was looking for an easy answer. Something like, oh, you've just got to, love your family. Or, that guy down the street that lends you his lawnmower. The people that are good to you. But Jesus in Matthew 5 says there's no virtue in that. The sinners, the pagans, the tax collectors, the publicans, those people that you consider to be not so great people, do that much. And so he tells this story and asks the lawyer, who was this man's neighbor? Which I think is why he chose the Samaritan. The Jews and the Samaritans for over 500 years had been fighting because the Jews thought the Samaritans were impure, and they just hated each other, and they had been fighting for well over 500 years. And this lawyer hated the Samaritans so much that when Jesus asked him, who was this man's neighbor, he couldn't bear to say the Samaritan. He had to say the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus took this as another opportunity to not only say, well, you have to love the people that you hate so much, you cannot speak their names. But now also go and do like the Samaritan. Have mercy on all those that you see, all those who are in need, even if you would have liked to have walked on the other side of the road. And so when they saw, when the lawyer said that the neighbor was the one who had mercy on him, Jesus told him, now go and do likewise.